I think Julie had this brilliant idea. If you like it, Julie had this brilliant idea. If you don't like it, it's my fault. Right. So again, in schools, universities now, they're doing 3-minute theses. Like they take a student, and you hear, present all your work in 3 minutes. That's it. That's all you've got. And so what we're going to do today was we're going to take that and call them 3-minute tech talks instead. And we've got a couple folks. I've got the list somewhere. Over there. We're going to start with Julie, and then go to Ray, and then Sue, I think. And I'll call you out. But here are the rules of the road. The rules of the road are this. The idea was not to show you everything about it, but just to show you something cool that was going on, something innovative. If you really are interested in this, we'll talk to the person afterwards. Because you can talk for less than 3 minutes, or you can talk for 3 minutes, but you can't talk more than 3 minutes. Because I'm going to start clapping, and I want you guys to start clapping too, because I'm going to look like a real jerk if I'm the only one clapping for 3 minutes, all right? And so at that point, the person has to stop talking about it, and then we'll have a couple minutes of questions, and then we go on to the next person. Is this too soon?
I'm supposed to have a
Is Ray here? Is Ray here? Ray, you want to go first then?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Better you set up the
While they figure that out, we actually have a couple minutes. Did anybody have any questions about the previous talks? I know we had to shut some people down because of time limits. Were there other questions?
Okay, I can go.
All right, you got it?
Yeah. Okay, so step number one, don't start my 3 minutes yet.
Step number one.
Step number one, when you take your the run that you usually use to make your bags off of the big compressor and you decide to travel with the little compressor, you should make sure you have the right fittings on your little compressor. So
You tell me when I can start the clock. I do 3 minutes.
We're the right hose. Okay, so your bags. Your bags. Your bag.
Hey, Julie, you're going to hear my alarm go at 2:30.
Okay.
So
your bag comes like this, right? It comes flat if you're using these kinds of bags, you know, whatever size you're getting them in. So you just lean it over to one side. You follow the where it's reinforced there. Just lean it over to one side like that to fold it, to get it to be shaped like this, right? Then you make a handy dandy little jig like this so that you can cut your tags. So box cutter, right? Easy. The reason I'm showing you this, it might seem very basic, but it's just when I saw this, and full disclosure here, I think I saw this on the Oyster Grow Facebook page a couple years ago, and it made made my life different. It changed my life. It made it a lot easier because I wasn't going through 2 layers on the bag. Okay, so you cut, right? Pretty easy, but they're both sides. Sharp knife helps. So then you guys have done this, right? You've got your tabs and that bit, and then you do the other side. And this is usually a little sharper. Okay, so there's that done. So then you just fold this down so you get a nice straight edge, right? And the reason why I love this is that you're getting a nice seal on the inside, and you're not trying to get your hog rings through 2 layers of mesh. So you get your nice straight edge on that, get a good fold on that, and just get your rings in there. Okay, compressor man. All right. So.
Is your mic blowing into that?
I knew he was flawed. So you go like that, and then you fold so then that gives you a good seal on the inside, right? So then you fold your tabs over. And then this, all your outside flap is for at that point, is just sort of reinforce things a little bit. So you pull that over.
I can't hold it up longer.
30 seconds left, Julie.
All right. And there's your bag. And it's nice and clean. project, and this is the lovely coating that we're testing.
Yeah.
And this is about, on the Atlantic coast, anyway, the only thing that it's still stuck to.
All right, Julie, that's great. You have 5 seconds left, but we have 2 minutes for questions. Anybody have any questions for Julie about that?
Oh, and yeah, this is a specific height, and it's the height it is so that you can cut your tabs. You saw when I slid it down to cut the tabs, is so that these end up just the right height every time. Then of course you load your oysters in, and same sort of deal for closing it up, and then you can close it however you want, tie wraps or bungee or whatever. And you can look at this bag. It's not the most beautiful one I've ever done, but it's nice and clean on the inside, and you get it nice and secure because you didn't have to try and get through 2 layers of that at any point.
You got a question there, Julie?
What's the height? You know the answer?
Did Julie say?
I don't know the exact measurement on that.
34.
34? Yeah, 34 inches.
Great. Any other questions for Julie? All right, well done.
Get one of these, they rock.
Don't buy the Chinese ones. They're stuck. Get the Stanley box.
Ray, you want Brandon? Come on.
Yes.
What size hog ring?
What size hog ring?
3/4.
3/4 inch, yeah.
So Ray's going to talk about a divided bag, right?
Yes.
All right.
All right, so I'm from Buckner Street Industry, the fabricator of oyster growth system. And a few years ago, about 4 years ago, we were approached by one of our biggest aqua farmer, and he has about 60,000 of these bags, and he has 10,000 cages, and he was wanting to increase his density on his site without increasing the water. So one thing that he had tried on his own, he had tried a little experiment on if he segregated the bags, could he get more into the bags itself? And what we did, we supported a independent marine biologist that took on a project, measured every oyster, tagged them all, and in 2 years' time, what they did is they added, on the smaller ones, they added 25% more into the bags, and on the larger ones, 15% more of the bags. So if you think about it, a six bag cage, you automatically, it's like a 7-bag cage. So instead of adding more water, adding more equipment, all he did was we divided the bags, and surprisingly, we had 15% more growth. Because one thing that happens when you bunch up, when the oysters all bunch up in one corner, is they starve. The ones in the center starve. So you want to keep them nice and level and spread out. That's when they grow best. If you segregate the bags, that helps it even it out and promote better growth. So this is a little project that we promoted, and it turns out to be pretty darn good for this guy. So now he has 60,000 bags, and since that point, he has flipped over. I think he does about 10,000 a year. He's got 60, 70,000 bags, so it's going to take him 5-6 years to implement this system in there. But instead of having to buy more leases, water leases, and buy more equipment, he's found a way to get more out of his lease. So. Am I clear?
You're good. You've got 54 seconds left.
Really? Really? What am I going to talk about?
Yes. You can stop if you want.
You usually don't have a hard time speaking.
Are those two
That's
cages hog ring together? Is that what that is?
Yes, it is. It's got a divider in there, and it's hogged ring. This one here is made out of half inch by half inch wire, but he's used also a strip of Vexar bag in the center, and found that worked.
So it's one big cage that has been divided with the implementation of the other stuff inside. It's not two cages put together.
No. But this whole thing, what has happened with his, because most of these guys have counters, so it was a process change for them, because what they had to do is make sure that they could flip over and fill both ends. So.
The other thing, what I like about this is my arm can reach to the bottom of this bag. I can't reach to the bottom of that bag. So, and I always rip myself up on those bags here doing that. Yeah, question.
What is your final grow out count?
It depends on the site. We have the people that go with 185 final growth, and some go 225. If this guy is going between 225, 220, and 225, you should go at 185, 180, depending. But there's some people that go beyond that, depending on the flow of the water they have on their site. Some people use less. It's all site specific.
That's the entire bag, you split it 50/50.
What's that?
That's the entire bag, you split it 50/50.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, Dr. John Sukan is going to come up and talk about his bag rotation.
Navy Cove Oyster Company, we're located on the peninsula of Fort Morgan, Alabama. I'm going to use this as an example, okay? So we use a 6-bag oyster growth system. We're one of the few farms that I know, we don't box our bags. We use a sealed bag with a pipe closure. And so, because our bags are a little longer, our cages are 1 row of meshes wider. And we prefer a 4.5-inch mesh versus a 4-inch mesh. So the cages are more adapted to our longer bags because they're sealed. And we don't have any problem with growth in a sealed bag at all. That keeps us from having to box it. We're a lee shore farm, so predominantly through the year we're a calm farm. We're about a mile from the Mobile Bay ship channel, so every now and then our cages do this. When a ship weight comes in from a ship going up and down the channel, it isn't too frequent. But in the wintertime, when the cold fronts start coming through, our cages are rotten because we have a very long fetch from the north, okay? And what happens, and then the wind swings around to the east. Once it goes east and southeast, our cages are calm again. And then a front comes through and our cages are rocking again. So what happens is our locations on the sides or on the ends, the bags on the ends, those oysters get heavily pruned. And I forgot to point out, we religiously, once a week, we flip them. And we're not flipping just for air drying, but we're flipping for pruning too, because we count on that tumbling every week to do our pruning for us. So what happens then, in the wintertime, we get heavy pruning on the ends. But the middle bags grow just fine. And so what happens, so our middle bags reach market size first. So rather than move the bags all around to get even growth, we recognize we're a small farm, but we don't want all our oysters to come to market size at one time. So we just let that rocking do the pruning in the wintertime, and then we'll harvest bags 1 and 2, leave that open for a while, and then eventually the winter is over and the winds are out of the southeast and we're a lee shore farm again, and the heavily pruned oysters on the ends start putting a fan out real quick. And then we'll come in with seed in the early spring and stock it stock the middle with seed. And then eventually, a few months later, we harvest the end bags and then we spread the seed out throughout the cage. So what we're basically doing is we're just letting our farm conditions dictate how we manage to try to keep the workload down.
You got 30 seconds left.
Questions? Okay, thanks.
What system do you use to keep track of what bags are in which cage? Are you using spreadsheets?
Yeah, we use a spreadsheet. Our challenge is when we're out in the farm and we're renting the money, to remember what we did and get it on the spreadsheet when we get back in. Okay. But a lot of times I'm not thinking about that. But we'll just keep everything on the spreadsheet and keep track of it. It's all about observations. When you're running a hatchery, a nursery, or a farm, I teach my students, you gotta let the oysters speak. The oysters are going to tell you what to do. You just are aware. Pay attention to what they're trying to tell you. This told us, you harvest the middle, leave the ends alone till they pan out, and restock. Which is fine. We don't have to have a tumbler. We don't have to bring them in. And we use Scott Records. When we'll tumble our seed, most of it we're grading just once. We grade it out, and then we'll stop, and we just try to, we're part-timers, so we don't have to work too hard.
Next up, we have Andy DePaulo. He's going to tell us about the Shellivator. Second, it's there.
So I'm telling you
Don't
now.
hit that thing.
So the question is, what is a shellivator? So let's move on. It's a big oyster growing platform. This is the Shellvator Ranger 5000 fully loaded. It has Darcy trays on it. And this is our smaller model. We started out with one that has 12,000, but it's absolutely scalable. So let's move on. So it's an uplifting apparatus. And what it does is pneumatically we bring in compressed air through those green lines, and there's an exhaust port at the opposite end of those tubes which forces out the water much like a hydrolift boat. And this thing pops up out of the water. It's in 7 foot of water right now. So it's uplifting, and it's out of sight. This is my lovely wife Diane. She's towing this thing with a kayak, with a power boat. You could probably hook up a dozen of these and move hundreds of thousands of oysters out of sight. And that might be a good thing to do if a hurricane's coming or a freshwater event to kill all oysters in July. But you might want to move them to get better growth conditions, higher salinity for flavor, avoid oil spill, harmful algal bloom, to move before an event to an area that's not going to be closed when it rains 4 inches or the river stage goes up. So out of sight has another side to it. You spell out of sight. Now this is not a shell elevator. These are some gear in New York that floats, and the white stuff up on these, you might guess what's caused that. When you have any kind of floating gear, you're going to invite birds over there, and they're going to do their business there, and that's not something they're having to close down these areas because of the fecal coliform counts. But the other thing about out of sight is that the residents on the shoreline don't see those sticking out of the water, and the thieves don't either. So it's a added layer of security. So why would you want a shell elevator? Well, the original reason was to labor reduction, for desiccation, for density reduction or harvest. You just turn on a valve there and it pops up in under a minute. So it reduces your risk, either from human health or from oyster health. So you can move it out of the way, which also reduces your uncertainty. You know that you can move this to an open area when your area gets ready to close. And it's got a 3-dimensional footprint. This one had 6 layers of oysters, so if you have a small area, you can fit more of these up, and like on next to up here or something like that. The other size expands your capacity. You've gone 10-fold bigger, so if you got your hurricane, all you got to do is open your valves to sink them. So if you had 1,000 pieces of gear, now you got 100 pieces of gear. And that bandwidth, a lot of your gear you need to wade in unless you have really calm conditions. You can get in a boat. The current shell elevator goes out to 7 foot, but we have a new model with floats on top that would operate in any depth of water. So you're including your bandwidth to pretty much all coastal waters in Alabama. Now you got the capability of moving it for growth, flavor, to purify. You can move oysters into the Gulf and get rid of Vibrio vulnificus to non-detectable levels, or you could take them away from, say, a polluted area and clean them.
That is all other possibilities. All right, while we switch around, you guys can ask Andy a couple questions while we switch over to the next speaker.
Hey, what's the FDA say about moving oysters?
Yeah, there's folks in California have a federal permit and everything. I've applied for a grant, and one of the it's Gulf Coast Marine Fisheries, and one of the things is to start aquaculture in the Gulf of Mexico. So we're going to take baby steps. First, I'm going to move them to Soup's farm over there at an area that's already got a permit, and then we'd like to take an area in Bayou La Battery in Grand Bay and move it out past the closure when it rains 4 inches or there's a sewage bypass, so that you could continue to operate and have a cash flow. And then, I'd like to be able to have other non-riparian rights so I can move for flavor. But a lot of permits, yeah. But you don't get anywhere unless you put in the first application to do that.
All right. There's a question back there.
So, Andy, fully loaded and grow up, how many oysters will that thing hold?
That's the Shell Elevator 5000. So that's 5,000 oysters. Yeah, but you could get, the tubes I have right now are 12 inches in diameter and 20 feet long. I'm experimenting with some lighter weight pipes and everything, and that'd move it up to 7200.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Mason Dora Reserve Oyster Company.
All right. The floor is yours.
I got a farm about 3 years ago, and I learned very quickly from the advice of Skid and Jay Styron that I can't call myself an oyster farmer until I've killed 1 million, but I'm working as fast as I can, so maybe next time I see you, I'll kill 1 million. I've got a really unique area in that it's intertidal. At low inches, low tide is usually about 2 or 3 inches, and at high it's about 5. So what I'm showing you here kind of only works in something similar to that. I was initially going to go with the standard float bags with the torpedo tubes on each side, but they'd sit on the bottom quite a bit. After doing some research, I found a system that is used predominantly in the West Coast up at Taylor Shellfish Farms, Hamma, and it's here in the United States. It's called the lint system. Now, I have experimented with different shapes and sizes, but basically what this is, I take a 10-foot PVC 2-inch pipe, cut it in half, take a fence driver, drive it in a couple of feet, and put a row of 30 or 40 of these posts, run a cable through it, and then the bag hangs from the cable. So at low tide, it's completely out of the water and it's air dry. At high tide, it flips over. So what it's doing is it's flipping twice a day, which is giving me a better shell shape. Also, by anti-fouling, by being out of the water for a couple of hours, I'm not getting boring sponges, I'm not getting sea squirts, or any other kind of predators like that. But a lot of it has to do with height adjustment. One of the studies that I'm working on now, got a North Carolina Sea grant to compare 4 different gear types in my intertidal area. I've got about 4 months to finish that up, and I don't have the data, but just looking at it, the growth rate is about the same, but having no fouling, no barnacles, no boring sponges, it's reduced my labor considerably. So the lines that I've got, the regular standard floats, I go out and flip those once a week, flip them back over. These, I don't have to touch them at all until it's time to clean them. Now, a couple of little weird modifications I did, we were talking about hurricane mitigation, is these are hanging. If I've got a hurricane coming, all I've got to do is just run out, take off my clips, and it will hang straight down like that. Now, occasionally, this side of the bag will get a little bit of growth on it. So really all I have to do next time I go out is flip it over this way. That's on top, out of the water more, and it will anti-foul. I didn't have any with me today, but normally what I do is cut these in half, because it's a good gauge for me in that by having this much buoyancy, when it sinks, I know it's time to split that back. So pretty simple. As you have got a great demonstration from a hog ring gun today, I just hog ring the end of it and just slide it on and slide it back off.
Perfect.
Any questions? Wow. Any questions for Tim about that system? What is your tidal range at your site, Tim?
About 4.5 feet. But if you look at Taylor and you'll look at Hamma, they use a bag about this big and about that tall. So, depending on where you are, I did learn that there are some advantages to flip it vertically and some advantages to flip it horizontally, but that's really site specific. Actually, if it's horizontal, you have twice the carrying capacity as you would if you had it in this direction. So that's the gear savings cost.
Great.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, there's a question from Lisa.
What, I'm sorry, what is?
What's the height off the bottom of the cable?
I like to keep it out of the water about 1.5 hours to 2 hours a day. So, for me, that's about like that. From keeping it off the bottom, out of the water.
All right.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to move on to Clammerhead. Come on up. Clammerhead is going to talk about his oyster catcher. If you want to be in the middle, you can talk wherever you want to be.
Very good. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to give you 3 years worth of work and a 3-hour talk in 3 minutes. My name is Clammerhead. I'm co-founder, vice president, chief instigator of crash test dummy for Sandbar Oyster Company. Our company is founded on the development of a terminal substrate, which was originally done for the purpose of gathering oyster larvae for aquaculture. The quickest way to start out is we started out with plain jute erosion control. We infused it with specific cements, patent pending. We went to something similar to this. This is what it looks like when it dries. Originally, we went with just a flat surface because we weren't interested in hatcheries and none of that. Then we got into, okay, the stuff's made pretty solid. It gathers oyster larvae really good. After 4 to 6 months, it starts to decay. We can twist it and the single oysters pop off. That way we capture the diploid larvae. Then we got looking at the idea behind this is to get away from plastic bags as much as possible. We started figuring out, okay, what kind of rat soil we want to use. That's when we went into making, and this was a very short version of a rod shape of the same material. It's wet form. Whatever shape we lay it down in, that's the shape it stays in. So we started building structures out of it, pretty much three-dimensional, modular, tying them together with wire. We found out we could build the racks for holding this material. It would gather the oysters also. If the oysters don't grow there, storm comes along, it is in a boat, can't see the big signs that says shellfish leaves, they run over it, whatever, this stuff goes away. It doesn't leave any damage. If the oysters stay long enough to become mature to peel them off for aquaculture, you grab it, twist it, bend it, pop it, whatever's easiest for you, you get the single oysters. If you leave it there long enough, the oysters, as they get folded around this, they start to form the structure itself, where it's tied together with a wire that it's time to go out 4 to 6, sometimes 8 months. By the time that wire gives away, where the pieces cross, the oysters have formed a bond. This material keeps to decay, continues to decay. As it decays, the oysters grow to fill the void where the material was. So basically what we've done is created a restructure out of nothing but oysters. There's no more substrate left, there's no more fastening wire, there's no plastics, there's no trash. It just stays there.
All right, are we there? Is that done?
Am I out of time?
Yep, we are.
Oh, okay.
Let me ask some questions about that.
These are the jake hides that we mortared, and somebody asked me about this one.
Yeah, what's that?
This is oyster patty also. This holds about 1,000 to 1,200 oysters. This color in it is plain food dye. Each oyster that grows on this, as it decays, this comes off in the shell. All of our oysters are marked. We can mark them with color. We can insert certain sands to put a grain in it. So where you have the problem of branding theft or plain on-site aquaculture theft, you can't identify your oyster. We can identify our oysters. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, Clamorhead will be here if you guys are interested in that. Actually, I think all these folks that are presented are going to be here. So you
Bring your oysters tonight.
going to be upstairs tonight?
Oh, yes.
All right. All right. Next up on our list here is Scott Reichert from the Auburn University Shellfish Lab. And Scott, you're going to talk about the use of reed mariculture.
I think one of my legacies as I contemplate retirement, I think one of my legacies will be the use of algal concentrates for raising shellfish in the hatchery. Last year we produced 184 million eyed larvae, did 42 million seed, and ever since we've been open, since 2003, we've never used a bit of live algae. We've always used reed mariculture shellfish diet. Just real quick to tell you what kind of systems we use, we're using static systems. 4,000 liter tanks. They get stocked with 10 fertilized eggs per milliliter. Initial density 40 million a tank. And what we hope to get out of that is about 12 million eyed larvae in the end. So why would we use shellfish diet? I know some of you in here are already using it. We have staffing limitations. We have 3 full-time people on staff. We've got a farm to run, we've got research projects to run, and we've got a hatchery to run. So we really don't have anybody that we can dedicate full-time to raising algae. So it also takes a lot of space to raise algae. It takes a pretty large footprint to do the kind of production we're doing. And it costs a lot of money. Last year we spent probably about $10,000 in algae for the whole season, as opposed to the equipment, the supplies, the space, and the personnel to grow algae. So it works out really well for us. Real quickly, this is a spreadsheet we developed for calculating feed densities. It looks at optimal cell counts you want to maintain in the water, your larval density, your ingestion rate, and calculates how much you want to add to the system. We use a peristaltic pump system, so you got 2 columns there. After drain down, you put that initial feed in, get your cell count up to what it needs to be, and then your system feed is what you want to add over the next 24 hours to keep that cell density at the right level. The last column is the batch feed column. If you batch feed, if you don't have a feed system, you can just batch feed twice a day. If you want this spreadsheet, and I'm happy to share it with you, just look me up on the internet. Send me an email. A few tips in using it. You want those cells to disperse from that concentrate. So we mix it with a sodium chloride solution. It helps those cells disperse. If you mix it straight with seawater that's got organics in it, it'll tend to clump. But once you mix it in that sodium chloride solution, then you can dilute it further with just seawater. We then pour it through a 20 micron screen. Again, that just helps disperse those cells. If you're batch feeding, you can pour it through the screen right into your tank. Batch feed twice a day seems to be adequate.
5 seconds.
Continuous feed system. We use a peristaltic pump from a refrigerator. We put a 5-gallon bucket in there with a circulator pump to keep the algae in suspension. There's a timer on the peristaltic pump, and that doses it to the tanks.
And that is. Any questions for Scott, please? He would love a question about aeration.
How do you aerate, Scott?
We use an airlift in the center of the tank, and that just helps keep that algae in suspension. Big bubbles injected in the bottom. Keep it distributed throughout the water column. Don't use an air stone, that'll make it foam.
Any other questions for Scott? Yeah, I'm really reluctant to tackle him because he does grow seed for me. So, all right, thank you, Scott. Appreciate it. So I'll wrap up and just, as a note, we had a little trouble getting growers I hope folks next year won't be shy about doing this. We had a little trouble getting growers to volunteer for this. So, go ahead. I just thought I would throw out, this is not innovative. This is probably something I think we got out of published paper, but we get mud blisters, and here's the same oyster shell with x-rays and without, just to show you the damage that you see on the outside, but just to show you that there's a lot of damage inside that shell that you were not seeing. And we've surveyed growers, and we can debate whether mudworms are important or not, certainly. That's gross, all right? Yeah. So these are mudworms. So this is an oyster typically grown in like Portisville Bay for us. We brought that in, and you put them in water, and all those little mudworms like to come out. Do consumers care? I don't know, but it drives me crazy as a grower, all right? Some of the problems, obviously, if the shell gets crumbly, those worms will bail out once they get on the ice, and sometimes they'll squiggle across your oyster. That's not appetizing. And there is some evidence that they affect the quality of the meat of the oyster. So let's see if I can get it. So I just want to show you, basically for a brine dip, all we do, for the experiments that we were doing, we would just take our oysters for our experiments, and we would get a garbage can full of regular just water, and we would get food grade salt, because somebody wants to eat these oysters eventually. And I'm hoping the oysters won't open up, but just to be legit, we don't use road salt or anything like that. We get food. But
Finely granulated.
Yeah, you don't want the coarse grain. You want finely grated salt. You get it at a lot of the coastal fish shops would have something like that for salt. you know, I don't even remember what the recipe is. I just keep putting salt in until I can't mix any more in and there's actually salt on the bottom. I don't really worry about measuring. I just, what's that?
I like a pound per gallon.
Pound per gallon? All right. Do you have salt on the bottom in the end? Because you will find every cut you have on your hand when you start doing this. Because we just take the bags and we put them in. And we put them in for 6 minutes. And if you worry about your oysters opening up, I just jingle them. Every so often, just walk along and just move the bags, just jingle them, and the oysters presumably are staying closed. The key, though, is not the 6-minute grinding. It is the drying at least overnight to let that salt cake onto it. And when we did that, these were our number of mudworms. We were getting 20 or 35 mud blisters per oyster. And after we did the dip, we found one or something like that, but they're gone. That effectively kills them. Before you start thinking, no problem, this is how I'll control mud blisters from now on, this worked for us really well. We went out and monitored these oysters every week. Week 1, still looked good. Week 2, we were reinfested. We had brand new mudworms. So I don't think that I would use this as my control technique, but it is a way to get rid of the problem when you have it.
You mean just at harvest, or?
You know, I don't know if I do it right at harvest, but maybe before harvest, because first I gotta go back in the water. So with that, I'll end, and I will take any questions.
10 seconds to spare.
Any questions about that? Yes.
That's well and good in a lab setting,
Yeah.
but when you got 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 bag farm, and you say that's 6 minutes per bag soaked, plus the overnight air time, then it becomes impractical.
Well, you know, I think you can do it, but you have to scale that up. You have to have a vat to put it into, and I'm not putting in one bag at a time. We're putting multiple
But you
bags
also
at a
have to
time.
have the square footage to store 1,000 bags out of the water overnight.
Well, but, you know, Jay, we do, for some of our farms, they are bringing those bags in, they might be tumbling them. So if you're tumbling them, you can do it while you're processing that. So, but I agree with you, it has to be practical for somebody to use it. The other thing is, if you do use that, be careful. Some people use like dark containers and they keep that stuff in, and that water gets really hot in the sun, and the temperature shock might kill your oysters. We don't see our oysters die from this, but temperature shock can kill them. All right. Any other questions? Yes. Yeah, Tom.
The last thing I did before I retired from LSU was write a fact sheet on mudworms. And basically it says it's perfectly natural. It can be used as a gauge for fresh harvest. And if you're having a problem with that, just wipe it off your plate, ask for another napkin. And if you got kids sitting at the table, put it in a glass of water, because they're beautiful swimmers and very entertaining. Get you fired. Some of them are putting it up in a restaurant, you know, for consumers free. Be happy to send it to you.
I love it. So I hope, how about a round of applause for all the 3 minute talks?